Hey, what's up everybody? MMJ here, and today it's finally the time that we talk about the Gold Omega Ranger, what you may know now as the Death Ranger. If you want to read through this origin yourself, definitely check out Power Rangers Unlimited Death Ranger. The Death Ranger story is going to be a 2 or 3 part series where we're going to dive into the comics. We're really going to break down his origins and what he's done up to now, because I told y'all he's a menace, and we're going to get to that. And the journey begins here with this individual named Spark. What's unique about Spark that you need to know before we get into how he became the Death Ranger is that his species doesn't understand true death. Anytime a member of their species dies, they end up joining like this collective consciousness that they call the Legacy. After encountering one battle with an entity known as a Supernova Sister, on Safe Haven they end up encountering another Supernova Sister that invades their area. Before they could even morph, the Supernova Sister ends up, unfortunately, unaliving the Omega Blue Ranger, Haza. Now, Spark's entire team is trying to help them understand that Haza's not coming back. But Spark just refuses to understand that or believe that, believes there has to be a way. Where is Haza at? Well, the trauma led to Spark going down a bad rabbit hole. This rabbit hole led to Spark studying dark alchemy. Dark alchemy, combined with the power of their Omega Morpher, allowed them to learn how to control the dead. All of this was done through Spark's trauma. But Spark brought Haza back to life. Unfortunately, because Haza was not that strong at this moment, Spark was controlling her. The Omegas confronted Spark. Haza got her strength back and was able to stop Spark. It ultimately led to Spark losing control of the dead. And they became wounded, and all Haza wanted was for them to pass on together. Again, Spark could not handle or understand the idea that Haza was going to be gone for good. Spark's species has never known true loss or true death. And so because they could not deal with it in this stage and face potential consequences, Spark sealed themselves away into their own Omega Morpher. This allowed Spark to become more evil, more corrupt over time. And never again did the Omegas have a Gold Ranger. In part 2, we're going to explore modern events. Events will be found in Power Rangers issue 20, 21, 22, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue 100, 110, and Power Rangers Unlimited Hyperforce. See you guys soon for part 2. Well, I've been telling you guys for the last week that part 2 is coming for the Death Ranger saga, and here we go. Death Ranger part 2. For part 2, potentially part 3, we are following the following issues. Power Rangers 20 through 22. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, issue 100 and 110. As well as Power Rangers Unlimited Hyperforce. Now, Andros wants nothing more than to bring his people back. The Death Ranger knows this, and the Death Ranger plays into his emotions. Andros, in his desperation to not only bring back Zane, his best friend, but also his people, puts the Gold Omega Morpher on Zane's hand, which then releases the Death Ranger into a new host. This led to a young and naive Andros pretty much tricking and using Omega Red Jason. This was, of course, to get to Safe Haven and get into the vault where the Death Ranger's Morpher was located. Didn't take long for the Death Ranger to start showing his true colors, though. The Death Ranger killed an entire species known as the Zuriks. The Death Ranger also gravely wounded all of the Omega Rangers, enough to use them as hosts as well. Keep in mind that the Death Ranger's ability to raise and control the dead comes from the Morphin Grid as well. It's dark alchemy, but this dark alchemy is connected to the Morphin Grid, similar to the same way that Lord Zed was able to have a Morpher created for him and become the Zed Ranger. And then, perhaps a tragedy struck. We didn't lose anybody. In fact, we regained all of the Omegas and Jason. And Zane went back into his slumber that Andros was using to keep him alive. But with one large burst of Morphin Grid energy, Jason and the Omegas and everyone under the Death Ranger's control was freed. The residents of KO-35 got to go back to their eternal slumber, if you will. But because of what Jason had to do, or had to be done to Jason, Jason is now separated completely from the Morphin Grid and is no longer a Power Ranger. Now, obviously, we know Jason's going to come back as the Gold Ranger eventually, but it's going to take some time. Then we move on to Unlimited Hyperforce. It's either going to travel back in time to fix a grave wrong that they had committed to fix their future, and the Hyperforce Rangers run into a severely wounded Taylor and a Princess Shayla, and we're met with this scene here. In this scene, we can see the Death Ranger's back, and the Death Ranger has the Wild Force Rangers. Hey, what's up guys? MMJ here, and today we're finally ending the trilogy of the Death Ranger as we're focusing on the prelude to the Darkest Hour. We're going to see Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issue number 110, as well as Power Rangers Unlimited Hyperforce. Part 1 focused on his origin as Spark, the Gold Omega Ranger, and what led him down this path to ultimately becoming the Death Ranger. Part 2, we focused on how much of a menace the Death Ranger is, what he can do, and how they fought against the Rangers. In the Death Rangers fight against the Omega Rangers, we did get the ability to see for the first time the Gold Omegazord. If you guys have not checked it out yet, check out parts 1 and 2 pinned at the top of my page. They will definitely give you a lot of backstory heading into the end of this trilogy. It was almost as if the Death Ranger became the Gold Omegazord because he combined with the Omegazord and he took control of that whole thing. In this fight, we're going to make an honorable mention, though, to Dragon Thunder Megazord. Now, collectively, it did seem as if the Rangers did defeat the Death Ranger, but that wasn't the end of the Death Ranger. So, in Power Rangers Unlimited Hyperforce, we see a whole thing focusing on the Hyperforce team, and they decide that they're going to go back in time to fix some massive mistakes that they made. They go back in time to the Wild Force Rangers. We see Princess Shayla is on her deathbed. Taylor's pretty beat up herself. And the Death Ranger, well, they've got control of the rest of the team, just like they did the Omegas at one point. Now, what makes this arc so absolutely terrifying is we've got a Ranger Lord Zed. Rita's back, but she's not Rita anymore. She convinced Dark Spectre to give her the Vile powers. So, Master Vile's not a thing anymore. Now we've got Mistress Vile, and she's terrifying. So terrifying, in fact, that she's got Dane, of all villains, Dane, and the Death Ranger, and all that he controls, working for her. And like I said, right now the Death Ranger has the Wild Force Rangers under his control, except for Taylor. So, we've got the Darkest Hour upon us. Let's see where it goes.